2 days before the new year, Netflix decided to poop out Hilda and the Mountain King, an 85-minute TV movie based on the graphic novel of the same name, which is also based on a graphic novel franchise that also has its own TV show. This is a lot to take in. If you remember from my other channel, you would know how I initially praised the movie at 2 in the morning for having the same kind of spirit and strong story as the show has always had, with me going as far as to call it the Toy Story 3 of the Hilda franchise with a 10 out of 10 score. Well, it's not really that great after rewatching. Now granted, I don't hate the movie now, far from it. However, it feels like whenever I rewatch this movie with some of the problems I initially had, they just become even more of a bother with me with every rewatch, and end up finding more flaws in it as well. If you want my revised score, bam, solid 8 to a light 7 out of 10. It just feels like the writers behind spectacular episodes from the show like The Deer Fox, 50 Year Night, Stone Force, and more just kinda let their game down for this movie. And you think that with them working on an entire movie, they would be able to pull off something magical, but no, it's really not. The opening credits animation felt like the only thing that was possible to pull off in a movie like this, but I honestly think this whole movie would have been best if it was split into parts as part of the show instead. People like to crap on Netflix for their poor marketing decisions when it came to this movie, but honestly, looking back at it now, I think poor marketing was the fault of both Netflix and Silvergate Media, the people behind the Hilda series. I mean, for Christ's sake, man, they didn't even officially acknowledge the movie's existence until a month before the movie was coming, when practically every active Hilda fan at the time already knew the movie was about to be based on the Mountain King graphic novel, and the fact that details of the movie surfaced long before the movie's official announcement. And when they did announce it, it ended up becoming a marketing disaster because of, well, yeah.
He's pulling his cock out!
Honestly, if it weren't for the late SL announcement and bad promotional material from Silvergate, more people would have been interested in seeing this on day release, instead of having Hilda fans confused because they're now just realizing a movie about Hilda came out several months ago. It was and still is a really sticky situation, and honestly some of the other Hilda fans did a much better job at promoting this movie than even Silvergate or Netflix did combined. Now, aside from the topic of marketing, what about the actual movie itself? Well, not too much of my original complaints were changed from when I first initially watched the movie. David and Frida, while core characters of the show, really didn't need to have any screen time for this movie except maybe by the end. I don't know. I like David and Frida and it's nice to see them a part of this movie, but they don't really contribute much of anything at all throughout this movie. It's nice that they want to help Hilda out and they want to do what they can to do so, but I have a feeling the writers for this movie were told that they had to include David and Frida in here somewhere, but didn't really know what to do with them, so they kind of just made these side stories and scenes to have a longer runtime. Considering that the two never made an appearance in the actual graphic novel itself, I was already skeptical about the two's involvement in the movie a while before it had even came out. Maybe they could have found Hilda as a troll and then have Frida try to do a magic spell on Hilda, only to have a troll kick Frida into frickin' space. Or maybe just have the three reunite by the end like in the movie. Another issue I have with this movie is with how Eric Albert's character was written throughout most of the movie. To be fair, Eric as a character was pretty much made to have some kind of conflicting views with characters like Hilda ever since season 2. But Eric's writing for this movie felt more like he was written to be a generic and one-dimensional side villain instead of a guy trying to do his job in season 2. It wasn't until the end where he finally realizes some of the mistakes he has made about trolls, and when the movie finally lets him realize this, we cut to another scene where he's quitting. Great! And finally, the last major problem I have with this movie has to do with one character and one character only. The Bellkeeper.
Am I crazy? We don't use that word in here.
The Bellkeeper, you may ask, but he isn't in this movie. Exactly. This movie. A movie about the trolls and Hilda, and adding new procedures to keep the trolls out of Trollberg, involving bells. You would think this movie would at least acknowledge the Bellkeeper's existence, but no. For whatever reason, they just did not have a reason as to why he wasn't in the movie. Or so I thought.
A character that actually got removed from the movie was the Bellkeeper. His role wasn't very big.
Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
What? Are you telling me we got a whole ass episode from season 2 where this guy was one of the most important characters in that episode, only for the show to knowingly forget about him right after? What kind of bullshit is that? An Easter egg, a name drop, a cameo, even if he appeared on a small picture frame on a background. They literally could have done anything to acknowledge his existence even once. Just once. But given how they chose to take out anything about him on purpose for the reason that his role wasn't very big, leaves me so frustrated and disappointed that they couldn't even acknowledge his existence for even just a small pinch of time. I really wish they had talked about him for even just a couple of seconds, man. Literally anything to have the movie acknowledge his existence in this. With all the major problems I have with this movie now out of the way, what would I do to make this movie better? Well, I've been thinking about it for a bit and I think I have an idea. Firstly, I would just get rid of Frida and David for most of the movie except for the scene where they're protesting against the city procedures and the scene where they come together at the end. Then I would rewrite Eric's character to make him less of an ass than he was in the movie, before finally giving the Bellkeeper some brief but necessary screen time. Also, it should have been put into separate parts instead of being one big movie, and make the total runtime about 15 minutes less. Someday, Bellkeeper. Someday. Hey, if you like this video, subscribing and liking the video would be very much appreciated. This channel is just starting out, and if you like the content I've already put out so far, it would be amazing if you could stick around for future videos. Adios.